Okay, gentlemen, it is recording. We're actually now cruising towards the end of the third parak. Another 2-3 shiurim, and maybe we can have a real party. We are moving towards the end of this parak, towards the end of this chapter, and its discussion, which is you can just put mute. You should have like a button there that. You got that? Okay.
Where are we?
I'm starting from a Mishnah. Zorin Tachtea Yerakos B'mois Hakshamim. You're allowed to plant vegetables in the rain season, in the winter season. It's going to be 48b.
48.
Mem Ches Amud Beis. Look for a Mishnah.
Yeah, I'm going to.
Have you got it? All good. Okay, perfect. So basically, on theme with the previous Mishnahs that we've already been busy with, and also for the benefit of those that are joining us tonight, that you see, both of you. The last few Mishnahs, the last few pages have been talking about a particular type of tree, which was utilized for avodah zarah, for idol worship, especially in the time of the Canaanim, the Canaanites. You know, when we arrived in what was then called Canaan, in Eretz Yisrael, the end of the 40-year sojourn in the wilderness. So one of the things that we were commanded to do, besides dispossessing the 7 Canaanite nations that were there, was also to take a stand against their avodah zarah, against their idolatrous practices. There were various types of avodah zarah, idolatry that was practiced then. And if you look at various psukim, various verses in Devarim, in Deuteronomy, Moshe Rabbeinu, it's 11, line 11, 48b, line 11. Various phrases and verses in Deuteronomy and Devarim talk about you shouldn't learn to do what those Gentiles, what those nations do. And that became like the classic lesson for avodah zarah, for idol worship in all other cases. And one of the primary rules about avodah zarah, which obviously is dealt with extensively in this tractate, is that there is what is called, we've spoken of it a few times, an isur hana, which means a prohibition to benefit, not only to see or to eat, like if it's a fruit-producing plant, you know, we talk about not eating it, like something that's not kosher, but there is an isur hana. That means there's a prohibition with regard to benefiting from things that are avodah zarah or idolatrous or used for idolatry. And so therefore, once a tree was identified as an Asherah tree, as a tree that was utilized for idol worship, for various deities that existed then, it became a problem to benefit from that tree. How do you benefit from a tree? There are many ways. One is to benefit from its shade. That was discussed a lot in the last 1 or 2 sessions that we had. Walking under the tree, sitting under the tree, you know, when the sun is scorching, having a picnic under the tree. So the benefit of its shade. Then, I mean, if it's a fruit tree, there's the benefit of the fruit. But that's also an isur achila, prohibition of eating. Then there is also other kinds of benefit, because when trees shed their leaves, and that's what he's going to talk about over here, when trees shed their leaves, so what happens is the leaves fall down and they rot, but they become compost for whatever's underneath. The other thing is various plants and grass depend on the shade of a tree for their health. So basically, like if you go to your gardening experts and you want good grass, they're going to tell you that sometimes you have to put down shade grass and sometimes you have to put down sungrass. It depends where the patch of garden is that you're trying to plant your grass or your plants. So various plants, the sun would be too scorchy for them. They actually benefit from the trees and its foliage, its branches. So what happens if that tree is an avodah zarah tree? And on what grounds can one either benefit or not benefit from it? And that is the main subject of this Mishnah, where it says, Zorin Tachtea Yerakos B'mois Hakshamim. You are allowed to plant vegetables in winter underneath an Asherah tree. Why are you allowed to plant vegetables there in winter? Because in winter, the shade is not going to be an advantage to your vegetables. You're not really going to benefit. Because what happens is in the summer, the sun was prone to ruining most kinds of plants. So how would you call it? The shade of the tree would be a benefit to your vegetables that you're planting if you have a vegetable patch. But if it's your moisak shamim, if it's winter, your vegetables and the way they grow are going to be, and obviously when it says vegetables in the Mishnah without specifying exactly which ones, so that means generally speaking vegetables.
Rashi
He will get specific.
Rashi said because the tree hiding the sun even more than they need it in the winter.
Yeah. So basically the sun could be damaging in summer, in your moisachama. So you would be benefiting from the tree's shade, but in winter you would not be benefiting. And that's why I will loy be moisachama. You can't place your vegetable patch under an Asherah tree in summer, because then you would be directly benefiting from Avodah Zarah, from the shade of this Avodah Zarah tree. And that is with regard to all vegetables except, the Mishnah gives an exception, v'hachazayrin. When it comes to lettuce leaves, lettuce leaves are sensitive, extremely sensitive to sunlight, even the kind of sunlight that shines through in winter, and to whatever else comes about in winter, the frost, the rain. And in the word chazerin, you can actually see chazeres. You know, when we have our Seder plates, it's not too far away. Yeah. You got the one thing on the chazer, on the Seder plates called chazeret, the bitter herb, the bitter herb that is supposed to be, well, there's actually different meanings of chazeret. Chazeret, according to some, is actually romaine lettuce.
No, but chazeret is spice. I mean, it's hot.
Yeah, it's got to be bitter. It's got to be. But in this case, we're talking about lettuce. Safari is translating it as lettuce, like a bitter lettuce, like a romaine lettuce or a cos lettuce. But you're right, there's a lot of discussion about what the chazeret at the Seder actually is. Most people use horseradish and also lettuce. However, you look at it, the chazerin, the lettuce leaves cannot be planted under the Asherah tree, not in summer and not in winter, because either way it's going to have benefits from the shade that is provided by the tree. That is the opinion, the first opinion in the Mishnah, the opinion of what's called the Tanna Kama, the original author, also the opinion of the rabbis in general, unspecified opinion. Rabbi Yossi argues, and he says, Rabbi Yossi says, he's stricter. He says, not even vegetables in winter. You may not plant vegetables in winter under an Asherah tree, or summer, or any other place. What is the reason? What does he fear? What's his concern that he doesn't want us to plant our vegetables under an Asherah tree in winter? He says, because the leaves, the foliage falls down, upon the vegetables, and it composts it. In other words, you may not need the shade protection of the tree in winter, but what you are benefiting from is the zevel. You're benefiting from the waste and the compost. And in general, this is a discussion that came up a few times throughout this Masechta, that sometimes you think you're destroying the Avodah Zarah, you're grinding it, you're mincing it or whatever, but the very dust has its own benefits. The dust and the what would you call it? The garbage even has its own benefits in things that it does. So Rabbi Yossi seems to take a stricter line that even in the winter season, you should not plant your vegetables under that tree. Where should you plant your vegetables? Somewhere else. In other words, you shouldn't.
Sorry to interrupt. Just remember, if someone's driving a red Lexus, interior cab lights on.
That's me. That's me.
Can I switch it off?
We'll push it.
Can I switch it off?
Okay, will it? Is it the interior little light?
No,
I wonder if it will.
Big light.
Oh, the big light.
No, you know, the
It's just all
inside, no, the inside.
The inside lights, you
Yeah,
read,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think that should be okay. What do you think for
It'll be okay.
anybody got cables in case?
I'll take you.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff.
The proper push.
Thank you, Jeff.
We can push you.
I don't think it'll go.
Huh?
I don't think it'll run down the big.
Still volunteers to push it.
I'll go,
Gotta get
push it out.
The battery should be okay. They just serviced it recently, but who knows? You never know.
He's
Normally a
not
bat-
under the tree.
Huh?
He's not under the tree.
There's not much go. Yeah, but it was left.
So we'll just wait for Jeff.
Mike, you change the legends.
I'm a Seven supporter.
Pardon?
You won't get the t-shirt.
It's disappointing.
What
They have to
concerns
send
me
it down
was
out in
he's
the
drinking
slumber.
water. That's what
No,
concerns me.
I'm drinking water.
Bring me.
Whiskey.
He put water in his whiskey.
Wow.
That's for Sholem.
Oh, sure. I wasn't sure.
He put
Well, if
coke.
he's wearing a Stormer's shirt, it's possible, just like put coat.
He put coke, yeah.
Okay.
So it's getting okay.
You have a aluminum Schlanger.
Then
Never
again,
seen anything
I'm
but a
like,
shark shirt.
Mark will have a heart attack.
That's for sure.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you very much.
Went on. Went on.
No, I think I
Windows
actually put it on because when I arrived, I got the swelled Achilles tendon, so I thought I'll take some medicine before I walk in. So I put the light on. Above there's like a button. Yeah.
But it was off where I went to, but when I walked past it,
And then it
went on again.
went
because
on
the
again.
windows
Oh,
open.
because the windows open, went on. But also it sensed the key coming.
Ah,
It probably sensed that the key was near there.
okay.
But thank you. Okay.
Lovely call.
Just give us the exact price. You're struggling to find it.
You're struggling to find the place. Line 12
Memchet?
after the Mishnah. It's Yememchet Bays.
Memchet bed at the bottom.
Yeah, but the bottom is not like 12.
There are two Mishnayot there, not the top, the middle, the.
Lieber Amos.
No, that's further down. Your bait aim is further down.
Magnes
Can you see Masnisin with the beginning of the Mishnah? Zorin Tachtia Yerakos Memoisa Geshamim.
Okay.
You got it.
We didn't know.
No.
You got the wrong book.
You did it last time. You did it all the time.
This Mishnah we haven't done.
Yeah, we pressed it.
Oh, you guys went ahead. Oh, okay.
Catching up.
I'm sure. Certain guys in New York, other guys.
Oh, you read the Mishnah when, oh, okay.
Hold on, you're having some whiskey with your ass.
Always.
Says the Gemora. The Gemora asks for the reasoning of Rabbi Yossi. L'maimra de Rabbi Yossi Savar. Does this mean to say that Rabbi Yossi holds is of the opinion Ze v'ze goyrem asur, that if this as well as that is the cause of what happens, then it's still prohibited. The concept over here is there's a principle we talk about when one benefits from a tree or from a situation that's avodah zarah. But what if there's more than one contributing factor? What if the benefit is not only coming from one place, it's coming from more than one place? For example, if you plant a vegetable patch under the foliage and the branches of a tree, there's actually a few things that are coming together to make your planting successful. One is the ground, which doesn't have to do with the tree. The nutrients in the soil, the natural nutrients in the soil and the ground over there don't have to do with the tree. And then what's said, they don't have to do with the status of the tree as a tree of avodah zarah. And the other is the tree itself. So if you have a situation that you know that the entire benefit or cause is all from the avodah zarah, from the idolatrous thing, then you've got no leeway. But what happens if there's more than one cause? There's more than one contributing factor. That's what it means. This as well as that causes. And regarding this principle, there is a debate elsewhere. This is a principle or a formula that's debated by Rabbi Yossi and the rabbis in another place. that when it is a case of mixed benefit, you could call it, you're benefiting from this situation as well as benefiting from that situation. So what do? Do you say that because one of the contributing factors is the avodah zarah tree, it's a problem, but the other isn't a problem? How do you deal with a mixture? And the Gemora wants to say that maybe the reasoning in our Mishnah above, we assess the Mishnah, we try to figure out. That's how it's done. The Gemora tries to unpack, calculate, to figure out what is the reasoning in the Mishnah. And is the reasoning in the Mishnah that Rabbi Yossi says, Zeh v'zeh goyrem is osur. If you've got two ingredients in the same cake, and one is no good and one is good, then boom, no good. In other words, your one ingredient, in this case, in the same vegetables that are growing, is the benefit that the tree is providing. That's no good. It's an idolatrous tree. The other benefit is the nutrients in the ground that don't have to do with the tree. But because you have both of them, Rabbi Yossi's opinion might be Zeh v'zeh goyrem osur, that this as well as that, A, which is no good, plus B, which is good, is a problem. But Rabbanon Amra, and maybe the opinion of the sages is the opposite. And the sages perhaps say, Zeh v'zeh goyrem is mutter, that when you have two causes, and one cause is okay and one cause isn't okay, then we go with the one that's okay. Maybe that's the reason for this debate between the opinion of the rabbis and Rabbi Yossi in this Mishnah. That they say that the two different contributing reasons is we give extra weighting to the permissible reason, to the nutrients in the ground, and then we ignore the problem that is caused by the shade of the tree. But this is a suggestion, it's a havamina. The word lememra, by the way, in Talmudic Lashon is this to say, in other words, are we able to make an assumption that this is the cause of their dispute? And what does the Gemora do? It starts to analyze their opinions vis-a-vis other places. You can look in other places, and in other places you can see how they would rule, and you can start to extrapolate if it would hold the same over here. However, it would seem to us that when we look in other places, that this is not the line of Rabbi Yossi, and this is not the line of the rabbis. In fact, in other places, whereas over here he looks to be the stricter one who says, no, you can't benefit at all from this tree, so therefore don't plant there even in winter. And the rabbis say you can. In other discussions that are similar, it seems to be the other way around, that they are the strict ones and he is the more lenient one. And that is the wording of the Gemara here. It's actually the opposite that we've seen elsewhere. So gesund. It's actually the exact opposite that we've seen elsewhere. What did we see elsewhere? That when it came to a situation where a Jew encounters an item of avodah zarah, a Jew encounters an idol. Whatever happened, you bought a house, it was in the house. You bought some property, it was in the property. Now you're stuck because you now have something that you're not supposed to have. It's avodah zarah. So what do? You stick it in the Weber bride, you put it in the grinder, you smash it with, I don't know what, your hammer from your toolbox. What should you do with it? Sorry?
It's the shredder.
And over there, if you shred it, and it's, in some cases, you can make very beneficial, what do you call it, grains. So, Ditnan, we learned in a Mishnah, Rabbi Yossi says, Sheichek, first of all, grind it, take out your grinding machine, and then you can throw it in the wind or chuck it in the sea. So number one is take the structure and grind it. So now you've got a bucket of powder instead of an idolatrous statue or ornamental structure. Step number two, take that powder or that gravel, whatever it is that you ground this thing into. And usually these things were made of like clay or some kind of mineral. And now you're going to take that gravel or those grains, either chuck it in the sea or throw it into the wind. Just disperse it. So that was his opinion. Amrullah, the sages turned to him and said, hold on a second. This is a dangerous situation. You turn it into gravel, afinasa zevel, that becomes gravel. If you start throwing it out in the wind and you've got your garden or your vegetables or whatever it is, your situation may directly benefit. You know, if this statue was a good quality mineral, now suddenly the mineral content, the nutrient content of your garden or your vegetable patch or wherever it is that you're chucking it in your own property is going to go up. It might be high quality chemical compost. So afinas is zevel. This is zevel. And zevel is, although it's garbage, and it's high value recycling we're talking about here. And it says, if you look in the pasuk, if you look in the verse, where the verse talks about what happens when you get rid of the avodah zarah, the expression in the pasuk is lo yidbak b'yadcha ma'uma min ha'cherem. There should not cleave to your hand anything from that which is prohibited or doomed. Meaning, the pasuk is saying straight, I don't want you to benefit from even a grain. So therefore, the sages said, you can't just grind it. You have to find other methods. It's not discussed over here exactly, but they wanted it burnt. They wanted to make sure, or thrown in an ocean, which has nothing to do with you. They wanted you to make sure that it's not even going to benefit you in its, what do they call it? In its ground kind of state. But what would seem over here is that Rabbi Yossi seems to be of the opinion that it's not so bad to grind it. And if you benefit from it, so what's the difference that you benefit from it? You're benefiting from other things too. It would seem that why would he allow you to grind it and then throw it out in the wind? Because the concept would be that even if your garden and your vegetable patch and what belongs to you is going to have benefits from these grindings, shall we call it, that's not the only thing they're depending on. You also went to builders and you bought other compost and other chemicals, and you're not depending on you're using this and you're using that, and it's not directly related to avodah zarah only. It's not the only situation. So if this would make it sound like Rabbi Yossi's opinion on that formula is it's not a problem. You've got some gravel that you're benefiting from, even though it was once an idol, and you've got other gravel that you're benefiting from because it's neutral. It was there already. So not a problem. And the sages seem to be the ones who say, lo yidbak v'yodchem umah, like comets. We say even the tiniest bit is a big problem. So the sages seem to say the same thing over here. No, we don't want you to benefit even from one little grain. It doesn't matter what else is going on there. And it doesn't matter if it's 1% or 1,000% or whatever. Get that stuff out the way. It's completely prohibited. But what the Gemora is pointing out is these opinions don't weigh up. Because in our Mishnah, it would seem the other way around, that the right wing and the left wing, if I could borrow from politics, seems to be mixed up over here. Maybe it's not a nice. You should don't start. Okay. The two opinions, I agree with you. Let's leave the. So the Gemara says, "Kasha derabanan aderabanan, kasha derabi yosi aderabi yosi." You have a question of the one opinion of the rabbis versus the other opinion of the rabbis. It doesn't seem to line up. Then in one place they say it's okay because anyways it's not just the shade of the tree, it's also the nutrients in the ground, it's fine. But in the other place they're the ones to say we don't want you to use even the tiniest little grain. And it's a contradiction of Rabbi Yossi to Rabbi Yossi, because he's the one in our Mishnah who says we don't want you to use anything from that tree. We don't care what's in the ground. And here he says it doesn't matter if this ground idol benefits you because there's other stuff here too. So how do you reconcile these opinions that seem to be different? One place, the copy paste doesn't seem to work. So the Gemara says, B'shlom od Rabbi Yossi. I can tell you a good answer according to Rabbi Yossi, Ad Rabbi Yossi Lakashya. The Gemara says that we can actually explain that with regard to Rabbi Yossi's differing opinions in the two places, it's not contradictory. The context in this situation is not exactly the same as the context in that situation. What's the difference in context? Hossam over there, where Rabbi Yossi said that you are grinding an idol and you can spritz that gravel and it doesn't matter if some falls into your domain and you benefit, is the ka'azal ebud. It was going for full-on destruction. If you look at the nature of the act of grinding, it's a destructive act. You have an idol, you grind it. You no longer have the idol. It's lost its complete form and value. You would be unable to sell it to somebody else for anything close to its original value. You've messed it up. You've destroyed it. Because it's a total destructive act. We have asked you to destroy the idol and you've ground it and destroyed it. That's what's called ibud, or destruction. It's gone. So therefore, he's not makpid that there's some gravel or dust left. It's dust, it's gravel. The essential idol that was there is gone. So he's not so stringent if you're going to have some of that blow into your flowers and your vegetables and benefit you. Because the main primary action destroyed it. Matir, that's why he permitted it. Over here, when we talk about the Asherah tree, there's no destruction. Nobody was destroying that Asherah tree. Maybe the Asherah tree is in a public domain and it belongs to some goyim and you don't have a right to destroy it. They're coming back to pray to their Asherah tree next week, Wednesday, or whenever the service is. No one was destroying the Asherah tree. We were just asking whether you're allowed to plant your vegetables under it. Maybe it's in the street and the tree goes over the wall into your house. And now, although you don't intend to, you may end up benefiting from an Asherah tree. But there was no instruction of ibud, of destruction, no instruction to destruct. And therefore, that's why Rabbi Yossi said that this is different. The actual avodah zarah, the metzias, as we call it, the existence of the idolatrous thing remains in place. And therefore, we don't want to be so lenient and say, plant your vegetables under there, benefit from this, benefit from that. We don't want you to benefit. That's live, sustainable, existing avodah zarah. So Hassan the Ka'azal Ibud, back in the words, there where it's going for full-on demolishing or destruction, Matir, he permitted, Hachahir the Ka'azal Ibud, where it's not a full destruction, the Asherah tree remains, Asur, so he says, prohibited. Elo de Rabbanan Kasha, but the Gemora says, I have a hard time resolving the differential between the rabbi's opinion in one place and another. Rabbi Yossi's opinion, it was easy to find a different context between an idol that's getting destroyed and a tree that's not getting destroyed. But when it comes to the rabbis, we remain perplexed. Why would it be that when it comes to the Asherah tree, they say so-called a strict situation, that you may not benefit at all. That when it comes to the Asherah tree, they don't mind that you benefit. And when it comes to grinding up an idol, not even a grain. So the Gemara says, so one solution is Eipuch, turn it around. In other words, as we've said many times, the discussions in Gemara consisted of figuring out discussions and extrapolations that happened before them in previous history. So perhaps it was the other way around. Perhaps the debate that we heard, we got the sides mixed up. That maybe, in fact, Rabbi Yossi was the lenient one and the rabbis were the strict one in both cases. Maybe he was the one. Eipuch means turn around your two, change the names behind each, the brand name behind each opinion. And then it will match on both sides. That Rabbi Yossi is the lenient one who says that as long as there's more than one contributing factor, we're not so fussed that avodah zarah is also a contributing factor, because there are other contributing factors. And it's the rabbis who took the strict line and said, no, we don't want even the smallest iota of avodah zarah. And then the Gemara says, but if you want, you can say, la taipuch, you don't have to turn it around. Can get quite technical. Turn it around or don't turn it around.
It happens quite often.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult thing.
The Rabbi Yossi Kedeshanin, leave Rabbi Yossi alone. Leave his opinion as it was originally recorded. And go with the original logic that we explained. Then in this case, which is great, because I like that. In this case, the idol was destroyed, and so he's not so concerned. And in that case, the tree was not destroyed, and he is concerned. The Rabbanon, but for the rabbis, why did the rabbis say that when it came to the Asherah tree, they weren't concerned, but when it came to the idol, they were? Because the rabbis based themselves on the principle of Rav Mori, son of Rav Kana, the improvement in the skin. It was a formula that the improvement in the skin creates the opposite of improvement, destruction in the flesh. So how does this principle work? That if an animal that was an offering, an animal was declared hegdish, and it was an offering to be offered for a sacrifice, and then the animal became disqualified, whatever it developed, a pagam or a mum, so now you've got a problem in hegdish, it's called, because the animal was consecrated. You can't sacrifice it, but it still has holiness, and it belongs to the temple treasury. So the halacha was that the animal would be sold and the proceeds would be dedicated to the temple treasury. You take this animal that can no longer be sacrificed, you sell it, and the proceeds are dedicated to the temple treasury because the animal was originally the highest level of holiness. An animal that's designated for a korban is a very high level of kedusha. So you're allowed to sell it now, and with the money that the animal is worth, you can donate the money to the temple treasury. Now, it's a bit of a leniency because the money in the general fund does not really have the same level of holiness as a consecrated animal. So you have to be, in the laws of Oinah and whatever, you have to be a bit careful here because you could be so-called downgrading the kedusha. You're not really allowed to purposefully or willfully downgrade the kedusha. And one of the rules that happens over here is that you're not allowed to skin the hide of the animal whole, even though it would make it more valuable than if you cut the animal into pieces. So in other words, there's a rule here that you can't say, okay, now if we're going to sell the animal anyway. So if you're the accountant or the financial guy in the temple treasury, you want to maximize the value of the animal. You want to get the most for it. But the rule is, because it's an animal that was going to be a korban, you can't really do everything you want. You're not allowed to skin the hide of the animal whole, which is a strange rule because that's how you get the most money for the animal. The hide of the animal is most valuable when it's skinned in a full piece. If it's skinned in smaller pieces, if it's cut up, it's not as valuable. And even so, you're not allowed to skin the hide. And Rav Murray explained the rule here. Why are you not allowed to skin the animal? Somebody could ask a question. I mean, after all, shouldn't you be, what do they say, acting in the interests of the temple treasury? You are the financial guy for the temple treasury. Shouldn't you be trying to get the temple treasury maximum value for this animal that it can sell and bank in its communal bank accounts? So Rav Murray explains that the reason you're not allowed to skin it is because even though skinning the hide whole makes the hide of the animal valuable and more valuable than it would cut into pieces, what happens is, although the value of the hide goes up, there is damage caused to the flesh of the animal. By taking the hide off whole, the flesh of the animal is damaged, and the value of the flesh of the animal is decreased, and now you would basically, because you're decreasing the value, you're damaging something that is holy, that belongs to the temple. And there's no overall money gain, because although you're gaining more by, you're gaining more by skinning it whole, you're losing also because the butcher is not going to pay for that meat what he paid because of the way you took off the skin and damaged the meat. In other words, they're, it's mutually exclusive. It's a trade-off. So that's the right word, Steve. There's a trade-off here. You're either going to maximize the value of the skin or you're going to maximize the value of the flesh. So we don't maximize the value of the skin because what you'll gain, you're going to lose on the flesh. What do they say? What you gain on the swings, you lose on the merry-go-round, or whatever that old expression.
Gain on the swings, you lose on the
what you gain on the swings, you lose on the merry-go-round. So basically, the idea is that sometimes you gain on one side of the sheet and lose on the other. How does this all relate to our Gemora? We've gone off into a complete other discussion. It goes like this, that perhaps the rabbis are saying that the truth of the matter is that when you plant stuff under an Asherah tree, two things are happening. You're gaining because that tree is dropping, how would you call it, foliage and giving shade, but you're also losing because it's blocking sun and maybe dropping some stuff that's not so good for your plants. So the truth of the matter is, based on a similar principle to this, the rabbis are saying we're not fussed about your vegetables under the Asherah tree, because whatever the benefits are, there's a downside to the uptake. And therefore, it's sort of what's the word?
Okay.
One cancels the other. It's a contra transaction. One cancels the other. And that, says the Gemora, is the reason why the rabbis would differentiate between growing vegetables under an Asherah tree and destroying an idol. When it came to destroying the idol, it's a clear-cut case. You're a Jew, and this is Avodah Zarah, you've got to destroy it. And we don't like the fact that when you destroy it, you're still left with granules, and those granules could create benefits. So we want to know that those granules are burnt and obliterated and not benefited from. The same rabbis allow you to plant your vegetables under an Asherah tree. How does that make sense? Because there they would follow this principle of Rav Mari Bereder Rav Kana, that it's a level out situation. We're not fussed about the benefit of the tree because there's a downside too, so it levels out. And that's what the Gemara is explaining, is a way that you can Hochanami, as he says, he actually says it here. That which he benefits from the composting of the leaves is damaged by shade. The value that's enhanced with regard to the planted vegetables by the foliage of the tree is offset by the damage caused by the shade. Therefore, since there's no overall profit, it's like, when people try to focus on one side and the accountant says, don't focus on one side of the sheet. Overall, bottom line, are you winning or losing? The bottom line is you're losing, or you're not gaining anything, or it's a sideways move. And that's why the rabbis allow you to plant your vegetables under the Asherah tree, because they don't see that benefit as real. It's cancelled. And the Gemara will continue next week. It's already 9:34. So this discussion of Zevah Zegoyim carries on a little bit, not for long. There's one or two more questions on it. So, yeah. So we'll carry on with that.
It's the opposite. If your vegetables are planted and then they put the tree.
Sorry?
When you plant your vegetables and then